Today we're going to talk about strategic autonomy of a country. There's complex definition regarding what strategic autonomy is. There's political independency, economic self-sufficiency, military capability, technology, diplomatic flexibility, all these kind of things. But for many of us, the simple definition is whether the country is truly sovereign or is it like a vassal or satellite or client state of another country or puppet or something like that. But instead of making a normal video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a tier list of the countries. I always wanted to do this, but never get a chance. So today is the day. I'm going to put a list of countries into different categories, and I'm going to explain why I place them there. This is just my own opinion, by the way. I do not represent China. And let's go. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to fill each of these categories with a country to use as a reference, and we can then fill in other countries in those categories. All right, let's see. Let's start with S tier. Russia, S tier. Whether you like Putin or not, you just can't say that Russia's current regime is under heavy influence of a foreign nation. Some Europeans are arguing that Russia is becoming a Chinese vassal. No, that's not true. Russia still holds many bargaining and negotiation power against China, and it is doing that when negotiating the price and terms of the power of Siberian to pipelines. And also how cooperation with China should go when it comes to the development of Eastern Russia. So Russia is not letting China to just walk all over the place. You can also argue that Russia is running by corrupted oligarchs that don't care about its own citizens. That's a flawed argument because at least oligarchs are buying with the interests of Russia as a state, especially under Putin's government. So they're not traders of Russia for another country, let's put it that way. How Russians distribute its country's wealth internally is their business, not mine. Russia's military and nuclear arsenal is also world-class, and it has vast amount of resources to survive through tough time, even under heavy economic sanctions and potential import blockade or embargo. Finally, Russia is projecting its power onto other countries, especially its neighbors, which I know many of their neighbors do not like it, but that's one of the highlights of being in the S class, right? You have your own ideology, more or less, not just a servant of someone else's propaganda. I traveled to Russia very often in the past because transit flight through Moscow is very cheap to Europe compared to a direct flight. So I fly through Aeroflot very often. So it's no brainer, Russia S tier. Now, what will be a good A tier? Let's do Iran. Iran is A tier, okay? First of all, you can't say that Iran is any other country's pet. It literally runs its own proxy war in the region and projects its power onto its neighbors. No other countries order them to do so, right? It has a respectful diplomatic relationship with many countries in the global south, and with the Russian-Ukrainian war, its position has actually been strengthened, not weakened, all right? Iran is also energy and food independent. Very important if you want to play hardball against the US. It has its own military industrial complex with a respectable army of its own. Compared to Russia, it is just much smaller in terms of landmass, and it has no nuclear weapons. So I would say it belongs to A tier. What's a good B tier country? Let's go with my favorite country in Europe, actually, Austria. I used to run a medical project with a professor in Graz, a beautiful college town. I love dining on top of the hill in the middle of the city center. Absolutely gorgeous view. I highly recommend it. I also enjoy Salzburg, look at the pictures. Look at it. Stunning looking city, hometown to Mozart. For a country that is both Western leaning and landlocked, it is doing very well to actually keep its strategic autonomy alive. It is not in NATO to begin with, so more or less neutral. It stayed neutral throughout the entire Cold War. It is not sending any weapons to Ukraine at the moment, not in its interest. I remember once that Zelensky ran an internet conference in the Austria parliament, and a bunch of Austrian politicians just put a sign on their table saying something like negotiate and just walked out. So good job on you Austrians. Oh, and I love Red Bull in Formula 1. They're still kicking ass right now. So a solid B tier, I would say. I think it's almost impossible for a country like Austria to be anywhere higher than B tier, because it is a small country, right? With a small population, landlocked country, and many other limitations. But my audience have to understand that being high up on the list does not mean that it is better. It might be more troublesome, basically, not beneficial. Unless Austria and Hungary want to restart the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, it is good to stay below B tier, let's put it that way, and just enjoy prosperity and peace. What is a good C tier? Let's do Saudi Arabia. It has good relationship with Russia, China, and US, or at least it has good relationship with US before the Gaza crisis. Now it's a little bit tricky. It prospered very well under the unipolar system, became very rich, one of the biggest oil supplier in the world. However, my audience have to understand this: Saudi Arabia is under heavy US influence. Some people even call Saudi Arabia a US protectorate. It has US military base there, so that is a valid point. Well, recently with MBS in power, I would say that the political environment has become more risky. I know what MBS is aiming to do to achieve a higher strategic autonomy, but he has to understand, which I believe he already understands, that Saudi Arabia is too important to the United States. I know there's news of petrodollar ending, but I'm not so sure. Things might get ugly if MBS tries to really cross US. Among intellectuals here in China, intellectual elites, we always afraid when MBS make some geopolitical move, even when such move is aimed to get closer to China or to BRICS. We think that US can be very invasive when it comes to dealing with Saudi. And I won't be surprised if some crazy guy just came out of nowhere and land a few shots on MBS, and a new US leaning prince will be ushered in power. US is also pushing Saudi very hard to establish formal diplomatic tie with Israel. And as you guys can see, Saudi is very passive when dealing with Palestinian issue right now, which they should actually, because it is very sensitive and dangerous. So MBS needs to be extra careful when choosing his bodyguards or even his wife. So anyway, C tier for Saudi Arabia. Now down to D tier. So this is where I probably will start to offend some people. Let's say, so which country shall be the first one in D tier? Let's go with Germany. I'm sorry, Germans. Of all the countries in Europe, I traveled to Germany the most for business reasons. And as I said in my previous video, I love Germans. Germans are hardworking, well-educated, and straightforward, okay? So I'm going to be straightforward with my German friends here. Maybe historically, after World War II, Germans at times might move up to C tier, but you can't really go above C tier, okay? US NATO military base is there with tens of thousands of soldiers, and Germany has a powerful and balanced economic, okay? and also geographic location. It's just too important for US to let go. So US will go very far to keep Germany within this orbit. If it has to poke holes into some politician or blow up some energy infrastructures, it will do it. The only way Germans can get out of this situation is perhaps with a rebellion or a coup, but I'm not sure how that can happen with today's advanced surveillance technology and media brainwash. So I know there are German scholars and politicians who know very well the situation they're in. I will say there's no need to be too frustrated. It's going to be a very difficult decade or two. Just try your best to stay out of war and not send your boys and girls into conflict zones. That's the best you can do. And that's all I have to say. Germany, D tier. Okay, now the first F tier. Hong Kong. Now, just to be fair to all my audience, okay, I'm from Hong Kong. Hong Kong is not supposed to have that much of a strategic autonomy to begin with. It is part of China. End of discussion. You know, one country, two system. It starts with one country, okay? It's part of China. All those talks of China is cracking down on Hong Kong's autonomy, it was not supposed to have that much to begin with. And it's not Singapore, okay? And in addition, the incident that happened in 2019, that's a straight out color revolution to me, with US NGO backing the movement. I know many Hong Kong people were uncomfortable with some of the new legislation, but at the end, most older adults in Hong Kong are sensible, I would say. The violent ones are the younger generation, the students. Those are most vulnerable population to foreign influence and inceptions. It is what it is. People in Hong Kong have to come to accept the reality, okay? Whether they like it or not. Okay, now we completed the reference. Let's try to fill in these categories with other countries, all right? All right, let's see what country shall we do next. Let's do Mexico. Buenos dias, amigos. Mexico's politics is extremely chaotic and violent, all right? One of the most violent one on this planet, actually. It's run by a very decentralized government. It survives from serious drug cartel violence and organized crime, okay? The relationship it has with US has always been on the edge as well. So Mexicans, I consider them to be patriotic, especially when it comes to football. But I also understand some of my Mexican friends in my channel when they talked about Mexico being inside of a geopolitical prison. Yeah, I agree with you on that. It is what it is. Again, try to maintain a good, healthy relationship with the US and try not to do anything too reckless. So if China and Russia invite you to join like a military alliance, do not accept, okay, for your own sake. So I will put Mexico in C tier. It's a C. I don't think there's many. I just do not think US will accept any countries in Central America or South America to be anything above a C. So if a B, it will be, you know, sanction and embargo. This is how I feel. But C is not bad because, you know, wait till I get to Canada. So, all right, let's see. The next one. Okay, let's do another European countries right now. Let's do Czech Republic. I like Czech Republic. During COVID lockdown, okay, I traveled to Prague and I hide there for a month. It's a beautiful little city, and the Airbnb I rented was one of the most exotic experience I ever had, okay? You see that one balcony in the picture? It is right across the famous clock in the Old Town Square, okay? That was my room. Second floor, I remember renting that place for only 1,500 euros for a month. The original price was 5,000 euros, but the host decided to renovate the place, and I was his first guest after the renovation. So he gave me like a 75% discount. So it only cost me a fraction. And every morning when I walked out of that balcony, hundreds of people would just look at me thinking that I'm some kind of archbishop of the city or something, ready to give a speech. So, I mean, that's one of the most famous town square in Europe, if not the entire world. And getting a room there at that price in that location, it's like a fairy tale. So that's me drinking beer and watching a movie on the balcony, and just stare down at the peasants walking around. Oh my god, I never felt so pimp in my life. I don't know that much about Czech Republic politics. It should belong to either tier C or tier D. It is in NATO. It is supplying Ukraine with a lot of weapons and repairs. It is profiting somewhat from the war, I would say. And since back during the Soviet Union, it was in Warsaw Pact, I guess there was also some, I won't say hate, but dislike of Russia. And that's normal. It was also a manufacturing hub for Russian Soviet weapons back then. So it's a good way, I guess, to ramp up some production and sell to Ukraine. So I can't fully say that Czech Republic has been forced or bait into supporting Ukraine. I guess there are many population that is leaning Ukraine strongly in this war. I can totally understand that. I do not have a clear understanding again of Czech Republic's position. Maybe some of my audience can tell me. And I don't know how the public see this war and how it will end. And I remember when I was there, the whole city was covered with Ukrainian flag. So I'm not sure how it looks like right now. So I guess I will put Czech Republic in C tier. Friends of mine in this channel can tell me more in details, of course. All right, let's do another country from Asia. All right, let's do Vietnam. I like Vietnam. There are so many things I'm proud of about Vietnam. Of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council in UN, okay, Vietnam went to war with 4 of them: China, US, France, and British. And Vietnam survived all that, if not, beat off all of them. So think about it. Vietnam is not a big country, not heavily industrialized back then, fighting all those wars and coming out on top. That's no small achievement, all right? It requires a very battle-hardened and nationalistic population and very skillful diplomatic approach as well in order to, survive this kind of engagement. And I will say thanks a lot to Russia, who has been supporting Vietnam throughout, I think, all those wars against colonial power and independence, even against China. I think Russia was supporting Vietnam with a lot of weapons as well against Chinese. So of all the countries in the world, I would say today's Vietnam is the most like China. The political system is very similar. Vietnam is a single-party authoritarian system run by the Communist Party of Vietnam. Just like how China is running by one party in its country as well. So you can see Vietnam as some kind of mini China. I will say Vietnam is a solid B. And you can't really go higher than a B because of its size again. Maybe during the height of its communist expansion era, maybe at that time Vietnam can consider to be close to an A because it runs several proxy conflicts in the countries around them, but not anymore. Today's Vietnam might slowly drop down to a C, I would say, because its economic tie is very close to that of China. Many Chinese factories owners open sub-branches in Vietnam, and I even have friends there opening shops, okay? You can connect the supply chain easily from Guangdong province in China to Vietnam. So it's a hotspot. But when you integrate so closely with China, it also door a little bit of your strategic autonomy. So you have to understand that. But Vietnamese, for Vietnamese, yeah, it's not exactly a bad idea. As again, looking at this list, this is not a list of standard of living, right? Sometimes you don't need to be up there on top of the list, but you want to keep a certain strategic autonomy so other countries don't use you as a proxy war or something. Now, Biden just finished a trip there last year, so Vietnam is keeping its influence around the world quite well. It's playing balance, not just leaning completely towards China, which is very good for Vietnam again. So solid B tier. Okay, we have to get through this one. The United States. S tier. No, A tier. A tier. Okay, you can't blame me, Americans. All right. I mean, you guys are an automatic S tier, I know, but after the crisis in Gaza, what do you want me to say? Seriously, right? And in China today, okay, there's a joke. Israel is the true superpower, all right? It is Israel that's sitting in the permanent seat of the UN Security Council. I'm not even kidding. That is truly, there are Chinese who are saying that. We say that Israel is the true superpower in the world. Okay, it controls the entire banking sector and basically control US foreign policy, more or less. Here in US, I can laugh at the Americans all I want, but I can't do that to the Jewish. So that's a capital offense, okay? You can call US S tier. So what is Israel then? Like a super S tier? I don't know. I mean, just look at how Israel act in the UN Council meetings. It's not scared of anything. It's extremely aggressive and, out there. Just hold up the Bible as some kind of, law of physics. So it's quite a sight. I even stated in my other videos, US foreign policy serve the interests of US financial sector. Okay. And who owns US financial sector? Yes, exactly. Okay, what's next? Let's do Iraq. Iraq, yes. All right, Iraq, B tier, D tier. This is what's going on, okay? Every time when Iraq try to get to like a C tier, it get bombed to pieces, all right? When it tries to adapt renminbi as payment method, US will send troops back to Iraq. When it try to gain more autonomy and be friend with Iran, US start bombing those pro-Iranian Iraqis. So it's a country that desperately tried to get out of D tier, but couldn't. But things might change. Who knows? Because Middle East is quite a mess right now. So I'm not sure what's going to happen in the future. Now let's do Spain. Spain. I think Spain and Portugal is a low C or maybe a high D tier. I know there's a lot of globalist influence in Spanish politics, but Spain is not in a geopolitical hotspot on the map. So its government is not getting pressured that hard to act in a certain way and don't feel the enthusiasm compared to some of the other European, especially Eastern European states or other NATO countries, I would say. So I will put them in a tier above Germany. I remember Portugal sent something like 1 or 2 Leopard tanks to Ukraine during the early phase of the war. So I would say both Spain and Portugal carry this kind of public opinion of just leave us alone mentality. You know what I mean? Again, correct me if I'm wrong, okay? Spanish and Portuguese audience of mine. I don't think you guys really hate Russia that much and just kind of want this war to not escalate and stop. That's what I think. Again, correct me if I'm wrong. All right, let's do China. China. I think before 2008, China will be considered A tier. But after 2008 and with Xi Jinping in power, China become, I would say, S tier. In my opinion, I think many Chinese share this same perspective with me as well that 中国不是太想到处管什么屁事闲事，全世界的，只想自己安心发展。That's how I think, okay? China is not interested in becoming some regional or global hegemon and try to get into everybody's business. That's not Chinese style, not even today. It has this early US isolation mentality, but reality actually forced China to expand its influence to counter the Western containment. So I will talk about that more in the future video about One Belt, One Road initiative, which started back in 2013, what it is to me and why China went down that path. There's a whole story behind it. Okay, it's very interesting. But again, future video. So to summarize, China wants to free itself from being a US colony, to escape from US financial colonization. So it has to push forward its own foreign policy centered away from the US one. But again, future videos. Let's do South Korea and Japan at the same time, yes. The modern Japanese and South Korean history is not well studied or understood by Europeans or American publics. China knows South Korean and Japanese politics more than most other countries on the planet because we share many cultural background and history, right? Most Western countries just see how successful South Korea and Japan were for the past several decades, right? All those famous companies, Samsung, LG, Toyota, Hyundai, Sony. But regarding strategic autonomy of those countries, it's very limited, let's put it that way. The Japanese with the Plaza Accord lost decades is all related. Almost all South Korean leaders end up in jail, assassinated, committed suicide. Not many people in the West know that. Maybe I will put up a special video just for those two countries in the future. It can be dangerous and controversial at the same time, but we'll see. Now, this is a tier list, okay? I want to make a short analyze of the things, and I don't want to go too deep. You know, for the Abe assassination and also the South Korean opposition leader assassination, Lee, there are many Chinese intellectuals who consider both of those assassinations to be US-led. I don't know that much about the Abe assassination, to be honest, but he's well known to be the soul of Japanese politics and aim for more autonomy for Japan, and that's, as you know, not acceptable for US, especially when we enter this unipolar world that, you know, total obedience is something US need, not some, you know, player that is wiggling in between. All right, now the South Korean assassination, now that's very suspicious even to me, because the current president of South Korea, Yoon, won the election by a very thin margin. And when the victory was declared, there was an incident, okay? I don't think people know this very well, but I'll just say it. Now, the Chinese ambassador to South Korea went and talked to the opposition leader of South Korea. And US came out and tell China not to interfere with South Korean internal politics, okay? And Yoon threatened even to remove the Chinese ambassador from South Korea. I'm not sure how many people know this incident, and it's quite funny. Let me give you an example. Imagine this, okay? Use your logical mindset, all right? Imagine that Justin Trudeau, okay, won another presidency or prime minister, all right? And United States went to Canada and talked to the opposition leader of Canada who lost the election to Justin Trudeau, all right? And China came out of nowhere and say, you know, US, stop interfering with Canadian internal affairs. Now, what does it say in that case? What's the relationship between, you know, Justin Trudeau and China? Imagine, just imagine. So to say that means China is already interfering in Canadian internal politics. So yeah, South Korea is not that strategically autonomous. Let's put it that way. And today's Chinese intellectual, okay, many consider the current Korean president to be a pure US puppet, all right? And he also, from my understanding, has one of the lowest ever public support rating in South Korean history, something like 20-30%. Yeah, it's hovering around 30% right now, I think. He completely destroyed the South Korean and North Korean relationship, and destroyed the relationship also with China and with Russia. So way to go. Let me show you a video. This is a video of him singing in the White House.
Chains that I can make those people dance, and maybe they be happy for a while. February made me shiver with the paper I deliver. Bad news on the doorstep.
Just look at this. I mean, what do you think? Like, is he a puppet? I mean, South Korean. I know there's a few South Korean who watched my video. Like, tell me what you think of, you know, this current president of yours. And this is another news, okay? It's earlier. It's about 10 years ago. I mean, look at this news. The ex-South Korean leader went to join Xi Jinping in a victory military parade in China. To the US ruling established, that's like high treason, okay? Because the US was embarrassed in Korean War by the Chinese, and how can a South Korean leader join a military victory parade in China? And immediately after she went back to South Korea, she got caught in some court scandal, which to some, you know, Chinese analysts is kind of like a setup. So yeah, US has a huge influence on South Korean politics. Let's put it that way. I would say in the past, both South Korea and Japan will belong to like a C tier country. But today, I would say South Korea dropped down to a D tier because of the current president. It's just too US leaning. And let's just end it there. Well, this will be the first part of the video. I will see you in the second part of the video.